Hey there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's another Red Pill Religion podcast. Red Pill Religion, where amongst the things we say is that a good religious argument is a great thing between friends. Also, learning about other religions is useful information, including if you're an atheist, by the way. At least understand how religious people really think rather than in broad generalizations. If you like the kind of work we do here on Red Pill Religion, please hit us on redpillreligion.com. That's where we update every day. That's where you'll find our PayPal, our Bitcoin, our merchandise. We got people ordering shirts. We got art for sale. Go ahead. We got coffee mugs. Check it all out on redpillreligion.com on the sidebar there. We appreciate your patronage. We are still on Patreon. We are also on Subscribestar, and we'd love to hear from you there. Thanks for those of you who have joined us on Subscribestar. Find us on Facebook, Minds, and definitely find us on dissenter.com, which is probably the best site on the internet if you want to be able to actually comment on things in a fairly free and uncensored environment. It's no wonder most of the social media platforms want it shut down. No, they do not advertise. I just endorsed it as probably the best social media site online for the moment. In any case, today I'm pleased to say that we are joined again with a friend of ours, Rabbi Oliver. Say hello to everybody, Rabbi.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking a little bit about the Jewish religion here. Now, I'm going to give a little speech here because I'm just going to give it straight. No, I am not a Jew. Red Pill Religion is not a Jew-controlled site. It is not a Zionist site. I am not a sellout to the Jews. I would just tell you that there is no one Jewish entity to go after anyway. The fact of the matter is I have had not just Jewish friends, but also Mormon friends and Hindu friends and friends of other religions and Muslim friends. And I don't know, we talk to people of all religions here. And we're of the opinion that if you're smarter about religion and more educated about religion, your life will go better. You'll get along better with people, and you might find something that makes your life a lot better. So while I'm a firm Christian, I do not believe in the type of proselytizing where you simply drive people off and threaten them and offend them or any of that. And it is a fact that before I even became a Christian, I befriended a number of people who were Orthodox Jews, of which there's actually more than one type. Orthodox Jews actually helped me conclude that it was rational to believe there was a God. So I'll be forever in their debt for that one. So whatever else our religious disagreements, I've always had, quite a number of my Jewish friends just congratulated me when I became Christian and were pleased for me. You got to get used to seeing religious people as real people, first and foremost. So anyway, that's that whole long conversation. So Rabbi, how you doing tonight?
Good, thank God.
You have a nice Sabbath?
Shabbos, yeah, thank you.
One of the coolest things about the Jewish religion, if you ask me, is that when they're taking it seriously, they stay home and don't use any electronics or anything for 24 hours, basically from sundown on Friday until sundown on Saturday, right, Rabbi?
That's about 25 hours because it's not sundown on Saturday. It's once 3 stars come out, which is another hour later. Yeah, so it works out to be 25 hours, and we don't necessarily stay home. We go to the synagogue and go out to friends' houses to socialize and build community.
A lot of people talk like that would suck. But I think that if we look at the way the world is now, forcing yourself to once a day just completely unplug from everything, pray, reflect, read, play, visit people,
have family time.
Have family time for yourself, maybe family, study, whatever it is. No news, no nothing, and being there with your own community of like-minded people. I think it's an admirable custom, to be honest. In any case, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, Rabbi, was the subject of Zionism, because every time I tell somebody I have Jewish friends, they tell me I'm a Zionist stooge. Are you a Zionist, Rabbi?
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay. I have long viewed Zionism as primarily a secular ideology. Do you agree with me on that contention?
Yeah, I think that's historically true, that in the early 20th century, late 19th, earliest 20th century, there were secular ideologies of nationalism that were very popular in Europe. And that was the spirit of the day. And Jews who had become secular, who had given up Torah observance, Judaism, they wanted to find some kind of secular Jewish identity. And this was one of several secular Jewish identities, was the idea of nationalism for the Jewish people. Now, I'm not saying that I think nationalism is inherently, a terrible idea in itself for non-Jews, for nations. I think it has many merits. But in terms of the identity of the Jewish people, our identity has always been observing the Torah, observing the laws, and it hasn't been defined necessarily by a language. It hasn't been defined by living in a particular country. In fact, the majority or a vast amount of our history, we've lived outside the Holy Land in exile in various countries. We've been a diaspora community, and we have not necessarily spoken Hebrew. We've spoken other languages of our host countries, or languages similar to those of our host countries, like a sort of derivation from those of our host countries. And we have maintained our identity despite that. So our identity doesn't come from living in a land, even though it is the Holy Land, and speaking a language, even though it is, modern Hebrew is not the same as classical Hebrew, but it's derived from it. But in any case, our identity, our survival as a nation has not come from the concept of nationalism. And anyway, nationalism, as we know it today, is a more recent historical concept. I don't think it didn't exist in the way people conceive of it. I don't know all the history, but certainly not 1,000 years ago, there wasn't such a concept. So it was Jews who wanted to cast off the yoke of keeping the laws and in a way assimilate with the non-Jews, but they didn't want to go all the way and become Christian or what have you, and completely lose any Jewish identity, but rather they wanted to be similar to them in a way that they'd be accepted as Jews, but not literally lose any sense of being Jewish. And they spoke about the term they used was normalization. And it was, in effect, it's certainly a reaction to anti-Semitism, to persecution. So there was a certain element of legitimacy in the sense that many of the thinkers who came up with Zionism and pursued it, they were, they had gone through pogroms and various kinds of persecution, and they were trying to find a solution to this problem. And they felt that religion, the Jewish religion, was sort of the cause of the persecution, and if they would take on secular nationalism, which, like I said, was popular at the time, then they would be accepted, and there would no longer be this kind of persecution. Also, if they would have their own country with their own army and the ability to protect themselves, so then they wouldn't be at the mercy of their hosts, where they could be, harmed by their host. They would be in control of themselves. So this was the concept, but this is not, it may have some merits, but it's not a concept based on Torah. And I don't accept it. My identity as a Jew comes from my observance of the Torah, of its laws, its traditions, its customs. And I'm a proud Jew, even though I don't live in the land, and I don't speak the Hebrew language. I mean, I actually do speak Hebrew, but I don't necessarily speak it. And the point is that although
modern Hebrew, like they speak it in Israel, isn't really biblical Hebrew anyway. I mean, it is, but
It's derived from it. I'd speak actually modern Hebrew quite fluently, thank God. But I speak it because it's a useful language, not because I think it's some kind of moral virtue to speak it. I speak it in order to communicate. So anyway, yeah. So I reject the philosophy of Zionism, which tries to redefine Jewish identity to conform with secular nationalism, and to my mind, that is a kind of rebellion of God, a rejection of God, of His law and His Torah, which He said is eternal, and therefore this philosophy is temporary. It won't last. Ultimately, those Jews who accept it will see that it's flawed, and they will reject it.
Now this is very interesting because now you're an Orthodox Jew. There's more than one branch of Christian or Jewish Orthodoxy. Sorry. Are there not Jews, Orthodox Jews, believing Jews? And I do think this is important because this is something even as an outsider I notice that a lot of my friends don't, or even they even scoff at me. But I have found that secular Jews quite frequently are deeply hostile to religious Jews and like to mock them, including quite a bit of Hollywood seems to enjoy mocking Orthodox traditional Jewish observance and practice. I assume you've seen that too, Rabbi?
I don't watch Hollywood movies, but
fair enough.
From the sort of secondhand here and there, you definitely understand that secular Jews with influence in the media and the entertainment industry, they are anti-religious. Absolutely, they are.
So, do you support the existence of the state of Israel as it is right now? Well, no. First off, do you support the existence of the modern nation state of Israel?
Okay, it's a very good question. Okay, so it's not a straightforward answer, and I'm not trying to avoid the question, but I'll explain. So I follow the teachings of Rabbi Schneerson, Lubavitcher Rebbe, and what I understand is his position was we don't accept the philosophy of Zionism, of nationalism, but the concept of Jews seeking to protect themselves, that has merit. That is not inherently, and
on its own, that's not a bad thing.
Right. That's a worthy thing. And the concept of Jews wanting to build a Jewish settlement where they can do business and farm and prosper, that's a worthy thing. So, in other words, if that location would be anywhere else, it would also be worthy. It would be Europe. It would be if someone would buy land somewhere in Uganda, for that matter, as Theodore Herzl suggested. The idea of having a territory which where Jews could settle and promote their own safety, that has merit. So that's one point. Separate point is that the land has inherent holiness. It says so clearly in the scripture that it's the land God chose and gave to the Jewish people, and it's an eternal gift to the Jewish people. But that has nothing to do with Zionism. That has to do with the holiness of the land, and that there are many of the laws of the Torah that can only be kept in the land, various laws related to farming. And so it's been the wish of Jews throughout all generations to be able to return to the Holy Land. In fact, we're in exile. The concept of being in exile is that we're in a country where we don't belong, and our goal is to return to our true country, which is the land of Israel. Now, the biblical land of Israel, the technical, according to Jewish law, the borders of the land of Israel are different from those of the modern secular state of Israel. So, for example, the bottom of Lebanon, modern day Lebanon, is 100% part of the biblical Holy Land, and various laws related to farming would be applicable if a Jew would be living there, just a Jew living there under the control of the Lebanese government. He would have to follow those laws because it is, according to Jewish law, it's part of the Holy Land. Conversely, the city of Eilat, all the way at the bottom, that is not in the Holy Land. It is if a Jew goes there, he's leaving the Holy Land. He's still in the state of Israel, but he's not in the Holy Land. He's not in the biblical land that was given to by God to Jewish people. So the modern state of Israel is part of it, large part of it, most of it is within the borders of the land of Israel given to the Jewish people, but not necessarily. So in any case,
okay, would it be easy to summarize and to say that you think, yes, it would be good if there were an Israel that was in the Holy Land, but you're not comfortable with what? Are you comfortable with the way that state was established? Are you comfortable with the way it conducts itself now?
The problem is the philosophy of Zionism, which views the state, the idea of having a state, as some kind of inherent good and something to be really proud about, because now we're a nation like other nations. Until now, we were kind of pathetic, second class. We didn't have our own country. We were just in exile. And now we've attained the status of having our own nation, and we have a currency, and we have an army, and we have a parliament, the Knesset, and so on. And that's where we get our status and our pride from. That it conflicts with Torah. Our national pride should come from keeping the Torah. So if someone would set up a village in Europe, a Jewish village in Europe, and defend themselves there, they wouldn't view that as their source of, main source of pride. They just view that as a means to an end. The problem is viewing the state and so on as the end in itself.
I have seen you on Facebook strongly condemning actions of the state of Israel.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Would you care to give a few examples just so that people will know you're not kidding? You don't have to. In fact, you don't even have to justify them at length. Just a few examples. We're not going to argue about them. There's a couple of examples to be useful.
Right. Well, the state of Israel, the government isn't necessarily. Let's step back. The whole concept of a state, of having a state, statism in its modern form, is a modern idea, and there are a lot of issues with it. It means the government has incredible power, and you have big governments, and socialism, and army and police, and Big Brother. And so the American system, the American experiment, is based on the skepticism of government power. And therefore they rejected monarchy. But even without monarchy, governments are still have way too much power, and power corrupts, and the state of Israel is no exception. And that doesn't mean that they're worse than anyone else. It just means, they attain the equality that they wanted with other countries. you have a government, there's corruption. Like, why was that something they were dreaming for? Why was that such a lofty goal to aim for, to be in such a situation? I think it'd be better to be a host in another country where your hosts are corrupt instead of creating a country where your own people are, you know, abusing their own citizens. Like, why is that such an accomplishment?
Okay, so that's fair.
That wasn't specific. You asked for something specific.
Sure, like, are they too hard on the Palestinians? Is there some, or is it, are they doing, legalizing things they shouldn't, or whatever it is, or just a couple, or you don't have to. I can't think of anything. I know you were very critical of them. For example, I've seen you mention that you're suspicious that Zionist elements might have been involved in 9/11.
Well, there does seem to be evidence for that, but every government that is able to have an intelligence organization that runs without oversight is at risk of the most terrible atrocities. So all that means is, again, that the Israeli government is just as prone to be corrupt and to cause tremendous harm as any other government. And we have no idea of the amount of corruption that is and harm that governments have done to their own people and to other people through the secrecy of these so-called intelligence organizations. So this is another aspect where the power of the state corrupts. Something I've been critical a lot about is that the government doesn't really protect its citizens. The whole claim is we're going to have an army and they're going to protect. Well, why don't they do something about all the rockets coming in from Gaza? Constantly, there are rockets going in on the villages in the south, and they don't act. If there would be rockets coming on a village in America from Cuba, they wouldn't tolerate that for a minute. So they don't truly act necessarily to protect the people. Another thing that I was critical about is that they've many times kicked Jews out of their land because of silly deals that have no substance to them. Especially in 2005, they kicked Jews out of an area of land in the Gaza area, but there were no non-Jews living there, and no non-Jews had even been. That wasn't land. The land that they developed there had been desolate. The Jews came, then they settled it, and then the government came and expelled them all, just for no reason. 10,000 Jews were expelled.
And yet they're fighting over these settlements in the middle of hostile zones where everybody hates them. It seems like the activities of the government there are more to do with other aims than protecting the Jewish people. Right.
Before what led up to that expulsion was that the IDF had patrols in the Gaza area, and that kept the Jews safe from the rockets. But they in some stupid so-called peace deal, Arik Sharon redeployed the soldiers from there, and then they started sending rockets on the villages in southern Israel, in the Gaza area, and then the government said, "Hey, they're sending rockets on you. We've got to come to evacuate you to save you from the rockets, and therefore we have to destroy all these villages because you're being attacked by rockets." And so the idea of fighting back against the rockets, well, no, that didn't occur to them, or they didn't have the strength to do that. It's not enough to have an army. You've got to have the courage to use the army to fight against your enemy instead of, retreating in a
Well,
cowardly way.
I am very much of the opinion that a lot of the people within Israel, as well as the people within Palestinian areas, are more tools and pawns of larger global forces than any actual religious agenda or agenda to protect the Jewish people. I've seen it for the longest time. I've known people on the Palestinian side who hate the Jews and hate the Zionists. And I'm like, I think both sides are kept from seeing everything because the big state interests and the big corporate interests are what's really driving most of the conflict, in my opinion.
Right. Nobody, there was no explanation given for the expulsion of the Jews from that area in Gush Katif in 2005, northern Israel. No explanation was. They just said, "We're doing it just because." Arik Sharon said, "We've decided to do it." And he gave the most vague explanations for why it was necessary. To me, there must have been some kind of, like you said, some kind of other agenda that is to do with some kind of secret deal or something, because there's no reason given that had any rational basis for destroying flourishing villages, and including they produced all this lettuce and fresh vegetables and they even employed Arabs. So what was accomplished by destroying by all that destruction? Nothing, except misery and
I can tell you one thing without knowing too much of the specifics there. If you look into it, secular Zionists and secular interests in Israel that have no religious agenda at all have all kinds of deals with transnational corporations for all kinds of things, so-called really military, not defense, but really military related, contractor related, oil, all sorts of transnational interests that have no big religious thing going on, do all kinds of things in Israel and all kinds of business in Israel. And the government there, just like the government here, is more dances to the tunes of who's got the shekels than the average everyday person living in Israel. And I haven't even been there, and I know this to be true. I've known a number of people who live in Israel. What do you think about efforts of religious Jews? Because I already know, I'm going to hear this one. No, it's all a lie. The Zionist Jews, rabbis, the rabbi Zionists, of which there are a few, but fewer than people realize. The rabbi Zionists have this whole secret plan concocted where they're going to rebuild the temple there, near or where the Dome of the Rock is, and they're even training priests and getting ready because they think they're going to rebuild the temple and bring back the Messiah. What do you think of that stuff?
We're absolutely looking forward to the return of the Messiah, and so that's true, but that comes from above. That's not something that we can actively bring. In fact, that was one of the mistakes of the Zionists, that they felt that we can return to the lands through our own efforts by force, through military might, human strength, whereas the Torah predicts that our return to the land will come through the Messiah, with the coming of the redemption, with the rebuilding of the Holy Temple. They said, no, we don't need to wait for the Messiah. We'll go and fight with our army, and also we don't need to keep the Torah. Really, we'll have this secular redemption. So the true concept of bringing the redemption is to increase in good deeds, in teaching Torah, in spreading goodness and kindness, justice and fairness, and that is what brings the redemption. And then it comes from above through God deciding that the people are worthy, and therefore He will send the Messiah. Okay,
so now wait a minute. Now I've heard, and of course, there's more than one school of Jewish thought. I mean, nobody can speak for all Judaism on this, I suppose. But I mean, you're not the only one. More than one Orthodox Jew I've known has sneered at the idea of these people who think they're going to rebuild the temple, and told me what you said, which is that the Messiah has to come, and then He'll make sure that temple gets rebuilt. you can't rebuild the temple without the Messiah first. Is that essentially what you would say too?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we don't even know the dimensions of the third holy temple. I believe it's in Zechariah. He speaks about the dimensions in general terms, but the precise dimensions are not known. Even great Torah scholars who've studied it have come up with various details, but there are many gaps in their knowledge. So how exactly would we build it if we don't know the blueprints, the plans for it? And in fact, we don't even know the precise location of the Holy Temple, exactly where it should be built. We don't even know that.
What about that Wailing Wall thing or whatever? Isn't that supposed to be on the site?
Yeah, obviously it's on the Temple Mount, but it has to be, its place is very exact. The exact location is not known. And therefore, these are all things that we're waiting for God to send the Messiah to show us. But so I don't accept this claim that there's some kind of look, I don't know. Maybe there's some people with some wacky ideas, but I mean, it's not going to happen until the actual Messiah comes, and someone who is, there's a group of people who are building the vessels of the Holy Temple. So they say they want it to be ready for when the time comes. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that per se. I don't really.
All right, but these stories we hear about priests in training with slaughter rituals and thinking they've got a red calf, they're going to have one soon or something like this. You think these people are more or less daffy?
Just a minute.
Well, I'm not against training for that.
There's been hype about the red calf constantly. So I mean, I don't really see anything problem with the hype about the red calf. I mean, I don't think they've found one because the rules for it are extremely precise. But
not even one white hair on it, right?
It never really excited me personally. Training, you're asking about training priests.
I've seen this. They're training their priests. Their priests are getting ready to start doing the slaughters at the temple, and they've got their plans. And I don't know how much of that is paranoid or how much they're focusing on a group of 200 Jews who are just kind of off their nuts, or if it sounds like it's not a real well-known thing, huh?
I'm not aware of that, but I don't have any problem. I think that's a very worthy thing to train priests who are descended from Aaron. Or the descendants of Aaron became the Kohanim, the priests.
Sure.
And indeed, in fact, there was a great rabbi in the last century, Rabbi Yisrael Meir, I forgot his last name, the Chafetz Chaim. So he encouraged that anyone who's a Cohen should study the laws of the slaughtering because Mashiach might come and they'll need to know it. So I think that's a worthy thing for them to study that, but that doesn't necessarily imply they're going to be sort of actively building the Holy Temple. It just means that they have faith that that Mashiach, the Messiah, will come soon, and then they will know the laws and be able to put them into practice.
But just, in other words, but this has been going on for centuries, more or less. I mean, it's not like all of a sudden Jews are doing this out of nowhere because they think they're going to bring the Messiah this year or whatever it is.
Well, they could bring the Messiah through good deeds, but not bring the Messiah through, preceding the Messiah and going and taking hold of the Temple Mount and building the temple without the Messiah. That's what I object to. That's what I don't think is realistic.
Within Orthodox Jewry generally, would you say that is the most prevalent attitude, that really the Messiah needs to be here before we can talk about this rebuilding the temple business? Is that pretty much a standard view?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be very prevalent in all Orthodox groups that I know of, and I've actually never met someone with that view that you describe. Maybe there are such people, but their ideas are they're very much exaggerated, and in terms of if there are such people,
well, I'll give you a clue. I happen to know sometimes they're working with millennialist Christians groups who give them money because they think they're going to be able to help bring back New Testament prophecies and bring Jesus back by helping Jews rebuild the temple. And actually, I can tell you from a Christian perspective, that is also like total wacky heresy. You don't trigger Jesus coming back. It's not like you find this special button that you press and, oh, now Jesus will come back because I did this. That is not how that works at all. And there are Christians who think that way. There really are. They're going to be God's instrument, and they're going to help these Jews in Israel. They'll probably find some crazy rabbi somewhere to help them.
I cannot comment on Christianity because
I know
it's not my place to do so.
I understand, Rabbi.
Yeah.
But I know I can tell you there are irresponsible Christian groups who act that way, and there are Jews happy to take crazy Christian money. Why wouldn't you? Well, there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't, but there will always be somebody. So all right. So you said basically Jews have to do good deeds. Are you saying basically the Jewish people have to prove themselves worthy before the Messiah will come back?
Rabbi Schneerson said that we bring the Mashiach by increasing in good deeds, increasing in Torah study, increasing in being good influence of others, spreading the awareness of God, spreading traditional biblical morality. We don't know exactly which good deed will be the one to bring the Messiah, but he gave the analogy of a scales, that every time you do another good deed, you tip the scales in the favor of redemption. And so we should view every opportunity we have to do another good deed as that might well be the final one to tip the scales, and then God will decide that it's time to send the Messiah to bring the redemption.
Now, I'm probably going to get a guy named, I'm not going to ask you to comment too much, but I'm going to get a guy named Michael Jones I'm going to try and get on here. I've been listening to lately, and he says a lot of provocative things, and I'm still digesting a lot of it. What point did I have in bringing him up? Because I'm not going to make you answer for him at length. But he seems to, oh, there it is. One of the things that he has suggested, and I won't call him an anti-Semite, first off, because there's things wrong with anti-Semitism, the term anti-Semite, since not all Jews are Semites and not all Semites are Jews. But leaving that aside, I apologize. I seem to have lost my train of thought again. That basically there's this concept called, I think it's tikkun olam, and doing good, but that within the Jewish religion, the thinking is you do good for the Jewish people first. And so whatever's in the Jewish people's interests first, that's what's doing good is. Would that also be a corruption or an irresponsible way of looking at it, or just curious?
I've never heard it expressed like that at all. And maybe he could quote his source, but the context of that expression with which I'm familiar is the verse where it says that Mashiach will come to correct the world, l'taken olam b'malchut shakai, in the kingdom of God. So correcting the world is about bringing people to the awareness of God, the ultimate kingdom of God with the coming of the Messiah. It has no context outside of that. The term tikkun olam has been sort of hijacked by non-religious Jews, and it essentially refers to some kind of socialist, social justice agenda, but that has nothing to do with Judaism.
I can understand that. I guess I'll just go ahead and ask these questions. Some of those is that the goyim, that would be us non-Jews, I guess, that Jews can kill them without. If Jews were in charge, Jews would be allowed to kill a goyim without the same suffering the same penalty, and that Jews are allowed to lie to people like us, to the goyim, if it forwards the lie about what they believe and lie about what they think and lie about their intentions if it would forward tikkun olam. How would you comment on that?
Okay, well, first, no, it's against God's law to commit murder, and so that would be a terrible sin. And second, to lie, God is a God of truth, and the Torah is the Torah of truth. And I mean, there are circumstances in which you wouldn't lie if, I don't know, the Gestapo came to your door and said, well, are you Jewish?
Your grandmother.
Yeah. And obviously there are contexts in which it's rational not to tell the truth, but just to be deceptive and conniving, absolutely not. In fact, it specifically, it says about the father of the Jewish people, who was Jacob, that he was Ish Tam, a man of integrity and honesty, and there's a whole story in the scripture with Laban, right? That his uncle, is that how you say it, Laban? In Hebrew, you say Lavan.
Probably Laban, yeah.
Yeah. So his uncle tried to trick him and have him marry Leah before Rachel. And the story in the Talmud is that Rachel warned Jacob. He said he's gonna try to trick you. So Jacob said, "Well, if he'll try to trick me, I'll be his brother in trickery." So Jacob tried to match Laban in his trickery, but he failed because Laban succeeded at tricking him. Look, there are contexts in which deception is necessary, but that's not a normal way to behave, and it's not a proper way to behave. It's only an extreme context where it's rational to do so, and that wouldn't just be true for Jews. It'd be for anybody who would understand that there are limits to such. But normally in normal life, we should be honest and straight and have integrity.
Okay. That makes sense. I guess might as well get to the last more incendiary inflammatory. Allegedly within Talmud, it says that Jesus Christ is in hell boiling in feces, and Jesus' mother was a whore of a carpenter. And I've heard other Jews tell me there's no such thing in there. What do you know about that?
Well, there's a dispute as to whether the Jesus mentioned in the Talmud is the Jesus that Christians talk about. Was possibly a different person, but maybe it wasn't. I don't know. That's something that scholars debate.
Are Jewish children taught to hate Jesus and taught to hate Christians?
I was not taught that, and certainly not in modern times in Anglo countries like Australia and America. I'm from Australia. In America, I wouldn't think, my parents definitely never did, and that wasn't something that was part of the culture, is part of the culture that I've observed in today. But I'm sure that back in Europe, where there was constant persecution by Christians, I'm sure that kind of sentiment was part of the culture. I wouldn't be surprised about that. But it's not. I have not observed it. Like I said,
And it's not something you teach your flock or, huh?
well, no, and I have no need to anyway. I teach Judaism, and you can understand that. Obviously, I don't accept other religions.
I,
Um,
sure.
and,
It's the same way for a Christian. What I can tell you, the Catholic perspective anyway, is that as far as is possible, be on good terms with all people. And obviously, the Christian message is to get people to accept Christ and become Christian. But if they won't, you don't, there's no justification for persecution. There might be justification for separation, maybe, we're going to go live here where they aren't, maybe, but there's just no justification for persecution. There's no justification for forcing. In fact, compulsory Christianity is a contradiction in terms. It can't be done. And so this is easy for me to understand. And this is also why I've never felt mistreated for my religion by Jews. I imagine the attitude is at least somewhat the same. As far as possible, be on good terms with people, even if they don't believe as you believe.
from what I've observed, actually, the ones with hostility to Christianity are secular Jews. I would say more than Orthodox Jews, from what I've observed. They have a strong sense of sort of historical persecution. They have this very strong attachment to the way things were in Europe, the Holocaust. They sort of, aside from Zionism, they derive their sense of identity from the experience of persecution, and that's tied in with Christianity. So Orthodox Jews don't need that because we've got the Torah, we've got, Jewish texts, so we don't need to
non-Christians or whatever. Yeah, and let me just point out too, when we're talking about the worst historic persecution of the Jews that ever occurred at the hands of secular governments. Adolf Hitler, I'm really getting tired of this one. I'll give you a source on it, Rabbi. It is a total myth that Hitler was a Christian or that he had any serious support from the Catholic Church. He really, really, really did not. In fact, he persecuted millions of Catholics and Lutherans and other Christian groups. Hitler ran a secular regime. Stalin, another persecutor of the Jews, also a persecutor of many Orthodox Christians, millions of them. In fact, another secular regime. It has been my note, and I've noticed this, and I'm not the only one to have noticed this. It seems that the most dangerous ideologies are the secular ideologies. You got that would include Zionism, that would include Nazism. In fact, I would argue that Zionism, ironically, appears to share many traits with fascist ideology. Nationalist, more or less socialist, supposedly scientific rationalist, and very secular. It would seem to me that secular ideologies are the real danger. I don't know if you agree with that, but it's sure how I see it. We should probably close on that note. What do you think there?
Well, in modern times, I definitely feel that the main struggle that we're facing is a struggle against secularism, hedonism, progressivism, all these isms that want to base their morality on rejection of any faith in any higher force and terrorize and crush anyone who expresses such a faith. So, I mean, that's really what your channel is about. It's about resisting that influence.
It is. It is. Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to get this one out too. 2 more minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up. This wasn't directly, but a lot of accusation is that the Jews are the ones who want to inflict pornography and free love sex culture onto the Goyim, the Gentile population. What do you think of prostitution and pornography and all that stuff, Rabbi?
Well, I mean, that couldn't be more contrary to the Torah. In fact, the opposition to these things comes from, is sourced in the Hebrew scripture, which is what, that is essentially Jewish. And so, therefore, those who adhere to Orthodox Judaism, of course, view all such things as complete rebellion against God, a rebellion against his law, against the institution of marriage and family that he created, and that is necessary for the world's prosperity, for civilized society. And so if any Jews are involved with that, well, they're rejecting their Judaism and their heritage by doing so. Like I said, there's some secular Jews have some kind of, intense hostility to non-Jews, and
an intense hostility to religious Jews. Yep, right. I've seen it. All right.
Yeah.
And we'll just close on that. I knew that was true too. The religious Jews I know detest the whole LGBT thing. They detest prostitution. They detest pornography and the pornification of the culture. They detest it. They don't
want to let their kids watch television at all, have any contact with the secular culture because of all this degeneracy.
And finally, I'll just mention for the audience, and I'll recommend it to you if you get a chance to look at it, Rabbi. It's a book called The Myth of Hitler's Pope, Pope Pius the 12th and His Secret War Against Nazi Germany, written by a David G. Dalen, who, by the way, is also a rabbi. I'm not sure in what tradition, but it is a staunch defense of how, in fact, the supposedly Hitler-friendly Pope was in fact persecuted, threatened, imprisoned, and nevertheless managed to get something like 40,000 Jews out of Europe through the Vatican, and had once made the mistake of speaking out against persecution of the Jews, only to have several thousand of them killed the next day as a clear message that if he didn't shut up, there would be more of that. So there was no more of that, but in fact, the Vatican ran an extensive refugee refuge and escape network to help Jews and others escape Nazi persecution. It's a very interesting book, and I hope more Jews would read it, just to see that these. Because as a Catholic, I get sick of being told somehow I'm responsible for Hitler. So I'll just leave it there. You don't have to comment. Everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. We ran a little long, but I love opportunities to do this. I am going to go try and get Michael Jones on now and ask him a few pointed questions. We've got debates. We got John C. Wright will be here tomorrow on Monday. We've got Ewan Jones, a sociologist, YouTuber, will be here tomorrow. We're probably also going to be putting up a conversation that I had with Reformed Christian apologist and his attempts to defend sola scriptura religion and Calvinism and persuade me. He made a few good points. We'll have an analysis of that at some point too. We're here every night. And yes, again, I will repeat, we talk to people of all religions here, if they are friendly and honest and honorable and good people. Rabbi Oliver, you're always one of our favorites to talk to. Thanks, everybody. Please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. Please drop a dime in the tip jar on redpillreligion.com. And God bless everybody. Oh, and shalom.
Shalom. Shalom.